Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be relent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a microlender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Well, today I have a special guest, Joel Dubin. He is the author of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Dysfunctional Companies. A humorous book about screwed up companies. The book was inspired by his decade-long career as a cybersecurity consultant working with dysfunctional companies. His book is based on 7 common traits he observed in dysfunctional companies. Though humorous, his book could also be called an anti-manual of how not to run a company. Joel, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Gerald. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you had an interesting career and a successful career as you navigated the roads of some of the challenges that you face as a cybersecurity consultant of decades of working with these different companies. What do you think has made you successful, even in navigating, as you would say, a dysfunctional company to try to help them with the services that you were providing?
I think my flexibility, my ability to adapt, and then to read people and see how to work with different people. You know, you might work with one person one way, and then someone else has a different personality type to work with them, another way. So there is no like one size fits all, pardon the cliche, for all personalities.
Right.
I had to deal with the run the gamut of all kinds of personalities, from people that were power mongers that were crazy, that would beat you up, to people that they were unsure, they had no confidence and they needed hand holding. So, that, and being flexible, I had to adapt to many different environments, dealing with different types of clients. I dealt with a range of clients from Fortune 500 to little mom and pop shops, different industries, private industry, retail, healthcare, you name it. So you had to be adaptable, different cultures, different peoples, different personalities.
Exactly. When we met and we talked about you coming on the show, and I looked at the title of your book, I thought, that's not actually a title or concept I normally would talk about. But then I thought about, well, you know what? You still have to be productive no matter who you're dealing with. And so maybe of value for people to hear, or someone to hear who's in a company or they're a consultant or a coach, and they're trying to be productive and they're trying to be productivity smart, but yet the people around them that they have to work with aren't so much.
Right? That's correct.
And so let me ask you this. What do you think is poorly understood in the way that you managed or worked in that environment and dealing with dysfunctional companies?
I think bureaucracy, which breeds office politics. So you had these people that had their little power centers, their little fiefdoms, their little kingdoms, and they eventually lost sight of what the business was doing. Sometimes you just wanted a slap them on the side of the head and say, "What business are we in?"
Right.
Because we're not in business anymore. We're in the business of bureaucracy, not in the business of business.
Right.
And they get wrapped up in that, and then they lose sight and they forget, and they think that, well, if I can build enough power and build enough of a power base, I can make more money. Well, the issue is not your power; it's serving the company. Not saying to be a total monk and self-sacrifice, but there has to be kind of a limit to what type of power some of these individuals have, and they have to see the focus of what the company is all about rather than serving themselves.
I've seen that as a consultant that's worked in the same type of companies and governments and so on. I've seen where, and then sometimes it's not blatant, right? Some situations is very blatant where the person's just being, a bad actor, right?
Yeah.
But there are other situations where it's like little bit of nuances of dysfunctionality and backstabbing or water cooler conversation or derailing people and those kinds of,
Yeah.
and we still, as trying to be productive, have to be able to manage that and handle that.
I haven't seen just as a footnote, I haven't seen a water cooler in a long time. I'd have to say conversations over the Kohler coffee machine now. It's high tech, but seriously, Gerald, yeah, I know.
Are you saying I'm giving away my age?
Me too, man. I even mentioned in the book, the water color coolers have been replaced, by the Kohler machine and all the fancy little
Right.
take home meals that are in the fridge now.
Right.
That's very true. I think you hit the nail, right on the head. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's ingrained in someone's personality, sometimes it's the pressure of the organization and the business or the pressure of the marketplace to get the product out there.
Right.
You know,
Right. So I guess I should have said the current conversation or the Nespresso conversation.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
So let me ask you, tell me your story because obviously you had skills and you had a background to where they saw you as an expert to bring in. So, tell me your story as far as like how did you become this person? And then what
Okay.
made you, obviously you have a sense of humor to write a book like this, but what made you look at it and go, this needs to be documented and shared.
So I started out, at the low levels of IT. I started out actually as a developer writing Java code, that type of a thing.
Okay.
So I now call myself a recovering developer. I went through the program to get over it. I wasn't a very good developer, but it was my entree into IT during the .com era when
Yeah.
all you had to put on your resume was Java, and they knew it wasn't coffee, and they would hire you. So in development, I was kind of like the guy that was banging on the piano. We thought he was Beethoven, and everybody is holding their hands over their ears. And someone noticed that, gee, I had all these security smarts. I was good at looking at security within code, and I was good at looking at security procedures. Says, let's me move you over to security. And then I blossomed. I did very well. And I did application security. I reviewed different types of procedures and processes. I was more of a procedures and processes guy. I make fun of that in the book, but
Yeah.
that's very much a part of security. I think that people look at security kind of the Hollywood vision, the pimple faced kid hacker that's, banging on the keys and breaking into the Pentagon. It's more than that. It's also the procedures, and policies. And I used to say to the young people that I would bring in when I reached levels of management, I hired people, you know, hackers are not, it's not like Perry Mason, because Perry Mason, is glamour, but most attorneys, they're doing kind of boring work. And these kids would say to me, "Who's Perry Mason?" And I thought, okay, never mind.
I was getting ready to say, that's along the lines of the water cooler
Yeah.
example I just gave.
So I thought, forget it, too young, another generation. Anyway, so then in security, I developed a specialization in the credit card industry. So I learned about credit card systems, encryption systems that are used specifically for credit cards.
Right.
And I moved into the PCI, the payment card industry standard
Okay.
area. And that's kind of where I sat and did very well, very successfully for many years. Within that, there's a niche
Yeah.
for application security. You don't think about it when you go to a store, and you swipe your card or put it in the machine, or you put your card number on a website. How is this all protected? I'm the guy that was the expert in all of that. So I did testing of systems, and the procedures for making sure that systems met security standards and so on. So that's kind of where I was, Gerald. But at the same time, there was a lot of garbage within some of those standards, crazy things.
Yeah.
The standards body, the PCI DSS had they were outside the industry, but they were dictating to the industry, and sometimes I just found that there were people, there were a lot of smart people at the PCI DSS. There were others that were clueless, like, well, you should do this, tell your things I would be embarrassed to tell my client to do. Clearly, there were people that didn't understand security or technology and were asking for crazy things that wouldn't help. So
Wow.
that's kind of my opinion. How did I get to the book? So as I saw all these crazy behaviors, there was many times I'd sit in a meeting and I'd hear some crazy idea and I go, well, if it makes sense, don't do it. And everybody in the room would laugh. Or I'd try to get to someone and there were meetings after meeting, like, chain meetings. I'd say, if you're not in a meeting, you should be assigned to one, and then we've all had the experience with customer service of, it's totally automated now. You can't get to a person at
Right.
all.
Yes.
Right. So that's that's the habit that I have in there. Habit 5, human contact with customers is absolutely prohibited. Right. So I found that, that if people that were talking to customers, they should be disciplined for actually trying to reach out. Yeah,
Right.
because the twin enemies of the dysfunctional company are employees and customers. So that's kind of how, Gerald, it kind of all evolved. So watching this and then watching pyramid building, thief building,
Yeah.
silos that didn't communicate. At some companies I see where I get the same question 5 times a day on my phone or an email. Why don't you guys talk together? Departments that weren't talking.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell how this all. And the book is therapy, kind of to get it all out. Like kiss and tell, get it out, man.
Exactly, exactly. Well, again, as I read through it and looked at it, I thought, there's some really good lessons in here about, like you said, what not to do, right? Especially if you want to be productivity smarts. It's kind of like the anti-productivity book, if you will, of what
Yeah,
not to do. And sometimes you really do have to think about, okay, what do I want? And then, but what do I not want? And you need to
right.
understand both. So let me ask you, let's get into the book here. In your book, The 7 Habits of Highly Dysfunctional Companies, you outline several detrimental behaviors. What habit do you believe has the most profound impact on employee productivity and why?
So in a sense, Gerald, and I'm not evading the question, they all do. But the one that's key is
Yeah.
number 7, kind of the last one, the conclusion, where I say the company doesn't serve the common good. So beside talking about how the company interfaces, oh boy, it's sounding like my corporate speak.
All
How the
right.
company deals with the outside world. Part of how it deals with the outside world is the internal development of all kinds of bad behaviors, and personalities. So
Yeah.
I think habit 7, where I talk a lot about, as I say, people that are, power mongers, power hungry, know-it-alls, people that naysayers, people that are ignorant, that don't know what they're doing. They were in a position because they were, political favorite of the boss
Right.
or the CEO and stuff like that. That generates just kind of this atmosphere of not knowing what to do, who do you approach, how do you talk to these people, and things like that. I mean, have the first personality type I mentioned there, and I say that these companies have like a training program deliberately to put these people out, to create them, as I call the megalomaniac.
Right.
This is the person that thinks they're God. They think they have all the power. They think they know everything. They're in real estate, but they happen to be able to know about medical. That, oh, just ask me. I know the know-it-all. You
Exactly.
know, so it's this personality mix. You got to have people that know how to be, even at high levels of management, know how to be vulnerable. You know what? You need to be able to say, I made a mistake.
Right.
We made a mistake. Let's, instead of dwelling on the mistake, let's see how we can fix it.
Right.
Let's work together and see how we can fix it.
In my consulting background, I've definitely seen, especially anytime you're doing project work or productivity work, and you're trying to help a company improve in its processes, where if someone has that mindset of that this is my turf,
Yeah.
right, which creates turf battles you talk about in your
Yeah.
book, that it really hurts and hinders the company, and it's like the company gets lost the value of it, of what it's trying to create. And
Yeah,
then individually, members are now much more concerned about protecting their turf than about as you said, the common good or the common purpose of
right.
the organization, right?
I mean, I saw a policy in one company that was so idiotic and it came from way on high. And I know that if I had been given the chance, a 15-minute PowerPoint, now I know I make fun of PowerPoint in here, but a PowerPoint to explain to the point why this policy didn't work, they would have, this executive would have changed course and done the more sensible policy instead of like, I'm the executive and I know. You don't know. Why don't you ask us? And
Right.
we'll give you guidance instead of just kind of beating your chest and coming down on us.
Exactly, exactly. So what's really interesting is that you've done some additional research on the experience of companies that have dysfunctional behaviors or habits. And what are some examples that you share that have an impact on the productivity of the organization? And then how these issues, I'm thinking more or less around the area of communication, right? Because when you're having those kinds of issues, communication becomes really challenging.
Okay, so if you're asking like a specific, I can give you specific incidents of things like
Sure. Sure.
So there was a company I worked with where they had an office located in the city I'm in Chicago, and a lot of the people there, were quite young, creative talent. A lot of them were single people that, were urban type people. And yes, there was a lot of costs associated with an office in the city, but the CEO moved out to a distant suburb and he wanted, and he doesn't even come into the office half the time. They shut the office down and moved it out there after they told everybody we're not going to close this office. It's too important. And then they did the exact opposite. And almost everybody in that office eventually left, and it hurt the company quite a bit. That's that kind of a thing. I've seen where retailers, for example, again, the same type of an idea. There's a store that's popular in an area. They shut it down and they don't listen to the public saying, we like this store. Well, it's not making money. I got it. That's important. Sure. It's not making money. It may have to be closed, right?
Right.
Or maybe it can be moved in another location or something like that. I mean, I've seen in real estate where, a mall developer that I worked with, they changed the character of the mall that didn't meet the community. It hurt them all. Just it's like lack of vision. If I was a CEO of a major airline, I'd fly those planes. In fact, you know what? I'd take a day out of every month, or maybe out of every 2 months, and I wouldn't come with my entourage of sycophants that follow me all day long. I'd just get on the plane and show up, and I'd want to see the dirty seats and the flight attendants complain. I want to see what's going on because
Right.
I want to see what's happening. There was once I was on a Southwest flight years ago, and somebody in front of me asked for a pillow, and this guy comes up dressed in the flight attendant, a male flight attendant, and I look at him, that's Herb Keller. I didn't say anything. He gave a customer the pillow, and he looked back at me like he knew that I knew that it was him. Then I went like this, like I wouldn't say anything. That's the kind of thing. Here's a CEO of a big company, and he flies the plane. He wants to see what's going on. Too
Right.
many executives, they hide in their ivory towers and in their bunkers. I make that really clear in the book.
Yeah, I think companies that are really in touch with the customers, the folks who are at the top come down and get engaged, or they have really good processes where they give the frontline workers, I'm thinking of Toyota and some others, because
Right.
that's the kind of the cars I buy and drive in. It's that they listen to the frontline worker who's really in touch with the issues and with the customer and with what they see is happening on the ground level that they don't see in the ivory tower, and they give them the ability to pull the cord to stop and say, hey, we got a problem here, we need to fix this, or we need management's insight. And then people come around and focus on resolving the problem, not on why did you pull the cord, you're slowing down
Right.
activity, it's going to hurt things. And they make cars that are reliable and you can trust them and so on. And obviously there's other car manufacturers out there. That's just happened to be the one I fell in love with between.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've heard about that on the Japanese assembly lines, that the lowest level worker could stop the whole thing, and then management will come down and say, "What's the problem? Let's see what we can do to fix it. Let's work."
Right.
together. You got to attack the problem, not the people.
Exactly. But they give them
Yeah.
that permission so the frontline person feels comfortable. And it's
Yeah.
almost like the undercover boss type scenario with Herb Kelleher that you're talking
Yeah.
about, where you kind of have to pretend to be the shopper or the flight attendant or the mechanic, and you go in and see how are things really going on at the lowest level of the organization and what's happening, because that tells you how things are being done throughout the cascading up and down the
Yeah.
value chain within the organization. So let me ask you this one. How do dysfunctional companies' habits typically affect the morale and motivation of employees? And what ripple effects does this have on overall productivity?
So what happens is when employees are frustrated when they feel they're not being heard,
Yeah,
or that they're being overmanaged, or that they're in a constant state of flux. For example, employees as like islands of expertise floating in a sea of management incompetence. I can't tell you how many companies I would go into. I go in, like a regular, say, a PCI type of gig. I come in, deal with the team. This is our boss. He comes in and then he's gone. That's fine. He's got other things to do. I
right,
come back a year later, it's a whole new boss, and every year it's a different. We don't know who we report to anymore.
right,
So I think what happens is the way it just morale just kind of erodes, lack of power, lack of communication, lack of understanding, and you're just kind of these random reorganizations. So I don't want to sound like I'm being contradictory, talking out of both sides of my mouth, where I say you got to be flexible, and then I say there's too many reorgs. It's reorgs that make sense,
right.
not that are feather bedding per particular executive. Prep people talk about it. Really, your group belongs in this group. It probably didn't make sense to have you here. Fine, then tell us about it. Let's talk about it. And if the guy or gal that you put in charge doesn't have the chops, the technical chops, and I say that because I come from IT to understand what I'm doing, maybe move that person to an area where their skills are better used.
Yeah, or if they have a knack for that, then get them a coach or a mentor who can
Yeah.
support them. And it's not, I think a lot of times when I talk about coaching and mentoring, I've always looked at it as, if I want to go to the next level, I want a mentor or coach who's a tour guide, somebody who's been there many times who can help me navigate, right? And it's not getting someone a coach or a mentor because there's a problem with them. And I think sometimes we look at it from
I
that.
say that specifically in the book. I do mention that that the good manager is someone you can look up to both on two levels. One, personality wise, it's someone that inspires you, helps you move, and also you got a technical question. Hey, I'm not sure about this, and the manager can say, well, in my experience, I ran into this. This is how I can help you. This is how you can do it.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
To me, that's a tour guide, right?
yeah,
It's not a
yeah.
travel.
That's a perfect, yeah, Gerald,
Yeah, I use the
perfect example.
example of a travel agent or a tour guide. The travel agent says,
Yeah.
"Here's the brochure. Go have a good time." Have you ever been there? No.
Well, the dysfunctional company, you're kind of traveling, but in a circle or on a treadmill. I call it the merry-go-round. So
Yeah,
sometimes you get flung off. So
exactly. And what's interesting too is that it's not just large companies, right? It can be companies of any size. I do have a question around that, but let me go back
yeah,
to another question I have, and that is, what role does leadership play in either fostering or mitigating dysfunctional habits within a company? And how does this influence productivity? And I'm thinking more about, you talk in your book about the pyramid and the silos and how that plays in process around communication.
okay.
Well,
So the pyramid, my issue with pyramids, and again, I don't want to be seen as like this anarchist that says you can't have any organization. You have to have organization. You have to have structure. You have to have some sort of procedures and policy. My issue is that you get this pyramid; it gets narrower and narrower at the top, and you can't see above the clouds there many times, and that you need stiff elbows to kind of to get up and to kind of move up in the organization. I always tell in the book jokingly, but it's partially true. You can always tell the most dangerous people. They have a rear view mirror attached to their shoulders so they can see who's stabbing them, in the back. So it's kind of this pyramid structure creates this kind of mentality of, you got to push people aside. You got to throw people under the bus. So I kind of look for, be more flexible, allow more open communication up and down, not just these formulatic, town hall meeting type things. And then in terms of the silos, Gerald, so that's kind of the silos embedded within the pyramid. So you have these groups that they don't talk to each other. There's politics. So we don't talk to them. They don't talk to us. And these like little Hatfield and McCoy battles within the company. Like, why? Just talk. We'll work it out. Make sure management is on top of it, and so on. I mean, I had a situation at a company. Oh, this is a great example. Just popped into my head. I was in tech. A lot of tech people can't stand salespeople, right?
Yeah.
They have this attitude. Oh, they're idiots. They'll say anything. So we had a problem where they were selling the wrong product. And once we were walking the client, say, oh no, what happened? Why is this doesn't fit? We can't do this. And they said, well, the salespeople explain. So I created what was called a PCI cheat sheet and I actually asked my manager, I said, let me teach the salespeople. We had an hour-long seminar. I gave them this cheat sheet. I said, put this up in your cubicle. The next time you got a call and they're asking for, this type of PCI, you can say, you know what? I can tell you right here, these are the three things you need to do before we can decide whether you need this PCI assessment. And they had it right there in their cubicle.
Right.
That cut down all of these missed sales where they're selling the wrong product. And then we had people on the team say, oh, salespeople are stupid. They don't know. No, let's educate them and tell them they're not stupid.
Exactly.
They're just not technical,
Right. Right. And you do have to take different parts of a company and get them partnered up so that they can learn to speak the same language.
Yeah.
And obviously, too, you have to be careful. I know you talk about the power of acronyms and just the jargon of companies, and that's a whole nother topic. But you do have to create pipelines of communication across the silos so that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. And you're really being able to, connect the marketing and sales and engineering and tech together so that you're moving together, you're aligned. I always look at it this way. If I'm on a football team, I want all of us going in one direction, right? That's the only way we're going to win
Right.
the game. And not only do you have to go in one direction, but you also have to be on the same team mentally. And the teams that lose any football game or any sports team, or I know the Celtics just won the championship. They probably had better cohesion and alignment, not only physically but mentally and emotionally, so that they were able to vibe at a level that was better than their competitors.
Another quick story about the silos here how I helped fix the problem. I was in a meeting. And there were business people and there were technical people together.
Yeah.
And there was an issue with a system called DNS, domain name system. And what that means real quick, for those that don't know, not technical people, of course, technical people look at the rest of the people in the company, they call them NTMs, non-technical morons. So that's what converts, when you type in an address on your browser, it converts it to the IP address so it can go right to the right computer.
Right.
So we're in this meeting, and DNS can be critical to the business because what do you name your website, right? What do you name your website, your address? Because that can be a marketing issue. And that was one of the issues. So we're talking DNS that. Technical people are going back and forth. And then at the end, the marketing people going, what's DNS? Oh my God. So I explained it to him as I just explained it to you. And I called it the phone book of the internet.
Right.
Every computer on the internet has a number called an IP address. And DNS allows you to type in the address of the website, and it will take it to that number. So I could picture after the meeting, one executive saying to the other, what's DNS? Oh, that's the phone book of the internet. That kind of a thing. Oh, I get it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's important to create that line of communication and open communication and get everyone on the same page when it comes to that, because that helps drop some of those silos and that dysfunctionality that can happen. Because again, once it's there and if it's not dealt with, it will derail the organization. And if it's a small entrepreneurial organization, it will derail it. If it's a family, I mean, the things that you talk about, if you can apply them to any organization, whether it's a family, a church, a community, a Fortune 500, a small startup business, all of this applies to, again, I use the words productivity smart. Because if I'm not communicating, I'm not creating an open dialogue, I'm not putting everybody on the same page, I'm not creating buy-in, I'm not creating teams, I'm slowly building bureaucracy and dysfunctionality that will erode everything I'm trying to build.
It's funny you mentioned that because I have a friend who is a religious guy and he used to be a minister, and he read the book and he loved it. And he said, it reminded him of the politics within his church. And there was times he'd say, where is God in all this?
Yes.
That type of a thing. And so the book is really, I've never worked for nonprofit. I never worked for law enforcement, government, or anything like that. And that's kind of why I focused on private industry.
Right.
Although I've heard stories, in security, I've had lunches, informational lunches with like FBI people talking about computer security. And an FBI agent once said to me, don't complain about your bureaucracy. I'll bet my bureaucracy beats your bureaucracy. you know, so, so I think that those people also would get some value in the book as well, because a lot of the same problems and people problems plague
Yeah.
those organizations as well.
Yes. So I want to jump down to something that I was thinking about. In your opinion, what are the steps a company should take when they recognize they have developed one or more of these dysfunctional habits to improve their productivity? And how do they avoid this concept of the spinning plates theory as well?
Okay, this is a tough one with the spinning plates because it seems like it's a badge of honor to be multitasking. I say multitasking is it's like, oh, I can do 20 things at once. To me, it's doing 20 things poorly at once.
Yes.
So it's partly you as a project manager, you understand it's kind of divvying up the work, spacing it out, making a plan that's kind of humane and that works and at the same time fits the schedule. So what do you do when you run into this? Well, if it comes from the very top, and there's personality issues coming from the very top, it may have to come from the board. Now I don't talk about boards a lot because boards are not involved in the day-to-day
Yep.
workings of the company. And I mentioned that in the introduction. So if someone reads it, says, wow, you didn't talk about, the board, because boards play a key role in selecting the people at the very top, particularly the CEO and so on. So some of these things are systemic that are hard to kind of, nail down. But, if you find individuals in the company that just aren't doing what they should be doing and they're blockading, it's time to kind of maybe tell them, to show them the door. The other thing is to try to promote, more communication. I know that sounds like a cliche. What does that mean? It's a broad thing.
Yeah.
Encourage people to talk, but listen when they talk.
Right.
And, you don't have to have endless meetings. You can do things by quick call. You can do things by email. If you can do it in an email, then skip the meeting. Of course, in the dysfunctional company, if you can do it in an email, you better have a meeting, and then meetings kind of propagate like rabbits. Meeting begets a meeting and a committee, and maybe we need another meeting to determine if we need more meetings. And, I talk about tweens. I call them the weekly meeting. And I say those are meant to maim and kill,
Right.
So again, streamline, 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 always be introspective. Don't be afraid to admit that you're wrong. That's the path to fixing the problem, and work with people. You got to talk. I was one that always internally networked all over the place. Every time I had an opportunity to meet someone in an entirely different department that had nothing to do with what I did, I'd get to know them. And, if I needed something in that department, I could call them or contact them instead of kind of hiding out in my little silo.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. So let me ask this last question before we kind of start wrapping things up here. What advice would you give an employee or someone who's working in an organization who finds themselves in a company with several of these dysfunctional habits? Advice would you give them on how to either move on or improve or have an impact to change things so that they can and the organization can become more productive?
Okay, so if they feel that they can approach management or that they can work with coworkers in a way to change these things, so be it, fine. If they can't, and this is the advice I always give everybody, look to your career, not your job. So, look at your work. I'm not telling you to slough off or do poorly in your company, or to sell your company secrets at all, but you don't be loyal to the company, be loyal to your career. So
Right.
what you should be constantly doing Gerald, beside maybe dealing with the specific issue, always in any case, you should always have a current resume. You should always be networking, and networking means whatever way that you can meet other people, either in your industry, trade organizations, if you have alumni contacts from the school that you went to,
Right.
friends and so on. I'd say that the last several jobs I had were all through, for example, mostly LinkedIn. You can't send a resume. I talk a lot about this. You see a job, oh, that looks like a perfect job. I'm like, send a resume. God knows where the resume goes. It goes into outer space.
Right.
So you're constantly networking, constantly being prepared, and act as if every day is your last, because the corporate angel of death can strike at any moment, and no one is immune. Even very powerful top CEOs can be canned at the last minute. Sometimes you see in the news, oh, the CEO of such and such big company, left. You don't know what went on behind closed doors. They could have come in that morning, and the janitor was there with a shotgun saying, pack up. So that's my advice is be loyal to yourself and your career. Constantly take any training to improve your skills.
Yep.
And always look, like right now we're in a very difficult situation with AI. No one really knows yet the impact. We're kind of the way computers were 20 years ago, 30
Yeah.
years ago, when the PC first came in. We're all kind of feeling around. Nobody has all the answers on all this, and it's going to drastically change the workplace and how we work. It might end up being I have to do a second edition of Seven Habits of Highly Dysfunctional AI Company. But so that you should always be prepared for change. Don't be complacent. Don't feel too comfortable, and always remember today could be your last. You never
Exactly.
know.
Exactly. And I think it's really important, especially today, if you're constantly wanting to improve and grow yourself, that, as you said, you network, you build relationships, you sit down and have a coffee, right? Or if the person's in another country
Oh
or
yeah.
another part of the country you're in, get on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or some other, Google Hangout, and have a virtual coffee. Talk to people, get to know them, because when you click a button and answer a job post or send a resume, more likely today, AI is parsing through all that
Yep.
information and weeding out people before they even have
Yep.
met the person, just on the text of your resume or your profile. And so one of the best ways to get around that is to network and build relationships. I can tell you, as I've started my company or companies, and as I've had clients in very lucrative consulting engagements, it's all been where people picked up the phone and called me
You
and
know.
said, "Hey, I know you have this skill. I have this issue. We need your help. Could you be in this place, or could you get on this call with me with this client, and could you support us?" And so I never had to go and fill out a job application. I didn't have to submit a resume. I didn't have to do any of that because
Yeah.
my network became my net worth.
You may still have to submit it through the company portal, but what I find is that you do it backwards.
Yes.
You call that person, you say, "Hey, I see this job. We met at this coffee clutch last week." And he goes, "You know what? Here's what you do. You still have to go through the company portal. I will tag that resume. I will make sure
Yes.
that I get it. It comes on my desk, and I'll run it through the HR mavens, and then we'll get you in the door. I know who you are. I remember you, and I think you might be a good fit, but you still have to apply." And I've had that happen where
Right.
it's actually several times where you're still going to have to do the online business and still fill out the
Right.
application, but you go through, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the ways to battle this whole idea of being disadvantaged by AI, right?
Yeah.
Or being separated by the technology where you're not really able to present yourself. But if you're building these relationships and you're having a human connection and you're creating emotional value, and sometimes it can't just be intellectual value, because
Yep.
anybody can search things online, research it on Google, and figure it out. But if you create emotional value where when they think of you, their brains are producing these positive neurochemicals and they're thinking, man, this is a good guy, or this is a good
Yeah.
young lady, or this is a person I would love to have on my team, or I would love to have their input or wisdom or insight. That's all emotional. And you can't get that with AI.
Right.
So I think one of the biggest things that people can do, or if you're listening and you're in that process where you're trying to figure out the job, have coffee, get in touch with people, create that emotional connection, because that's going to be a way out. Joel, if people want to learn more about you and pick up your book, where should they go?
My book is on Amazon.
Okay.
I have a website called dysfunctionalcompany.com.
Okay.
So, and there's a link to, I have other humor books, one related about marriage. And then I have a security book from years ago that's still in print, but that's where they can find me. That's the best way. There's links on there to the book, and there's an email address and so on. I can be reached that way. Yeah, that's why we're going directly to Amazon and doing a search for my name, Joel Dubin. You'll find my books there. So
excellent. Well, Joel, this has been a pleasure. This has been a great conversation. I like looking at this the way we did it, from looking at it from a different angle, if you will.
yeah,
But I think, we have to look at the positive parts of being productive, but we also have to look at the things that are real, right?
yeah.
That are really happening out there, and also be smart about how do we embrace and address those challenges as well. So thank you so much for coming on the Productivity
Thank you
Smart
for having me. I
podcast,
appreciate
and
it.
I'm really grateful and thankful for your wisdom and insight.
Thank you. Great.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.